For 18 years, the FBI hunted a ghost, a phantom who slipped homemade bombs into the U.S. mail, leaving a trail of shattered lives and panic headlines, while the most advanced law enforcement agency on Earth grasped at thin air. This map shows the geography of the attacks between 1978 and 1995, highlighting their terrifying randomness. 16 package bombs detonated across the country, targeting universities and airlines. 3 people were killed and 23 others were injured. To maintain this streak, the bomber deliberately created a forensic vacuum. He peeled the commercial skins off batteries to avoid batch tracking. He avoided store-bought glue entirely, instead boiling down deer hooves to make his own organic epoxy. He left 0 fingerprints and 0 DNA. With no fingerprints or DNA to analyze, investigators turned to behavioral profiling. They envisioned a young, blue-collar mechanic, an uneducated outsider working out of a quiet suburban garage. By focusing so intensely on standard forensic science and that blue-collar profile, the FBI spent nearly 2 decades looking in the exact wrong direction. They were entirely blind to the highly educated mastermind operating right under their noses. The actual suspect was Theodore Kaczynski. He had an IQ of 170 and was accepted into Harvard University when he was just 15 years old. At Harvard, Kaczynski, assigned the codename Lawful, volunteered for a psychological study led by Professor Henry A. Murray. These were CIA-backed experiments intended to measure human reactions to extreme stress. For 3 years, Kaczynski endured intensely abusive, deeply personal interrogations designed to systematically tear down his worldview and ego. Outwardly, he continued on a path of high academic achievement. He earned his PhD and became a mathematics professor at the University of California, Berkeley. Inwardly, however, he was seething. He felt a profound, growing alienation from modern technological society. Then, he abruptly walked away. He quit his prestigious teaching job, abandoned his career, and disappeared into the remote woods of Lincoln, Montana, moving into a 10 by 12-foot cabin with no electricity or running water. In that extreme isolation, his anger metastasized. He immersed himself in the writings of philosopher Jacques Ellul, obsessing over the idea that technological progress was destroying human autonomy. To strike back at the system he hated, he began constructing his first untraceable explosive device in total silence. Take a mathematically gifted mind, subject it to severe institutional trauma, and isolate it entirely from society. The result was a completely new, untraceable breed of domestic terrorist. In 1995, the bomber forced a standoff. He sent a 35,000-word essay titled Industrial Society and Its Future to the New York Times and the Washington Post. His demand was explicit. Publish the manifesto or the killings would continue. This posed an agonizing dilemma. Law enforcement agencies maintain a strict policy against negotiating with terrorists. But FBI Director Louis Freeh and Attorney General Janet Reno debated the demand for months, weighing the threat of future casualties against the danger of giving a killer a national platform. They gave the green light. In September 1995, the essay was printed as a special insert and distributed to millions of readers at newsstands and kitchen tables across the country. Conceding to a murderer's demands drew heavy criticism. Yet with every scientific attempt to find physical evidence exhausted, the FBI made a calculated gamble. They hoped someone, somewhere, would recognize the author's voice. That gamble paid off in Schenectady, New York. Linda Patrick read the published manifesto and noticed something unsettling. She urged her husband, David Kaczynski, to read it. He initially resisted, convinced his brother Ted couldn't possibly be a serial killer. Look at this split-screen comparison of a 1970s letter from Ted on the left and the 1995 manifesto on the right. As David read, specific phrases jumped off the page. Ted habitually used archaic 1950s slang like broad to describe women, and he relied on highly specific, unusual phrases like cool-headed logicians, the exact wording found in the Unabomber's text. David handed his brother's old letters over to the authorities. At the FBI, profiler James R. Fitzgerald pioneered an entirely new field, forensic linguistics. He didn't look at fingerprints, he looked at syntax. He mapped out overlapping structural similarities, matching vocabulary, and identical sentence outlines, building an airtight case that the two authors were the same man. For David, the realization brought a crushing moral burden. If he stayed silent, he would have the blood of future victims on his hands. If he spoke up, he was sending his own brother to a potential death sentence. He chose to stop the violence. Kaczynski's bombs were flawlessly sterile, leaving no physical trace for nearly 20 years. But he chose to end his silence. His demand to be understood intellectually provided the very data the FBI used to dismantle as anonymity. In April 1996, federal agents swarmed the tiny, isolated cabin in the Montana woods. Inside, they found a disheveled, quiet hermit. They also found the physical proof that had eluded them for nearly 2 decades. The cabin was packed with bomb-making chemicals, a live explosive device, thousands of pages of coded journals, and the vintage manual typewriter used to hammer out the manifesto. The ghost finally had a face. Theodore Kaczynski's arrest validated the forensic linguistic profile with absolute precision. The mathematician who waged a bloody 18-year war against the modern technological system eluded every forensic lab and fingerprint dusting. His defeat came from the oldest human technology of all, his own words.